right. What everybody's come here for this morning, we have one of our own speaking to us this morning. I met Mike back late 2016, 2017. He was at the sales and marketing team, and I went in just blind to what was going on. I said, this guy said Storyminers, what is that? You know, but I was very well pleased after going and attending and listening to Mike. And in fact, I think I made one of his presentations. We did some video, little short vignettes. And so I'm in his archive out there somewhere on YouTube or wherever he keeps it. But again, he's one of our own, and it's apropos we're talking about stories because the group just came and talked about Shamrock, and the young lady spoke about her son. That's a story, and it's very memorable, and it's based on touching individuals. And I'm thrilled as Mike goes through his particular presentation this morning. He's the founder and the managing partner for Storyminers. So without further ado, Mike, it's all yours.
Thanks. Thanks, everyone. Keep them entertained for just another minute, okay?
All right, we got a little...
Kelvin's going to tell you a joke or something.
I would tell you a story, but my stories get a little long, some of the folks say. So I won't tell you the story. Because I give you a lot of details. You know, I want to make sure you get into the mood of what's happening there and you actually become a part of the story.
Gotta get some popcorn.
Yeah, oh yeah, get a little popcorn there. Yes, you always have to do that. But you ready to go?
I'm good to go.
All righty.
Thank you very much. Welcome, everybody. David, thank you so much for introducing me originally to get me here. So you and the whole speaker committee, it was a great process. I hope everybody gets to do it. All right, so today we're going to talk about future story, but I wanted to start off with a little video, probably one of the best stories ever told.
This capsule history of our progress teaches us anything.
Get your volume up a little bit more.
It is that man in his quest for knowledge and progress is determined and cannot be deterred. We shall send to the moon, 240,000 miles away, a giant rocket more than 300 feet tall on an untried mission to an unknown celestial body, and then return it safely to Earth. But why, some say, the moon? Why choose this as our goal? And they may well ask, why climb the highest mountain? Why 35 years ago, fly the Atlantic? We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because that challenge is one that we're willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone. And therefore, as we set sail, we ask God's blessing on the most hazardous and dangerous greatest adventure on which man has ever embarked.
That was an amazing presentation, and I need to look at one thing right here. Hang on one second. I hope this is going to work. Okay. When Kennedy made that, can you guys hear me in the back?
A little bit louder.
All right. When Kennedy made that speech, he didn't have all that cool video of rockets going off, okay? He had just his words, and he inspired generations of people to change the way they worked, to change the way they invested, and to spend their time differently. $25 billion were spent, most of it after he unfortunately died. But the impact of that was 7 times. That was a huge return for the time, but it was all based on making people feel like they were in the future. Did you feel kind of confident about that presentation? Now, you know it already happened, and we did land on the moon, and it all worked. But back then, people were inspired, and they felt like they knew where they could go, how they were going to get there, and what the difference for them was going to be. In my opinion, that's one of the best stories about the future that's ever been told. Why did it work? What do you think? I'm looking for real answers. Why did that thing work? Yes?
I remember the quote, "Failure is not an option," and I don't know if that came from Apollo 11 or from Ken. I don't remember where it came from.
A good movie sometime. Yeah.
But what I heard today from him was failure was not an option.
Yeah, you have to do it. We've heard, yes,
Figure it
exactly.
out.
Yes.
He was passionate about it. It was
Mhm.
inspiring.
Passionate, inspiring. What else?
It made you think toward the future, like there's something that's bigger than us.
There's a hope there, absolutely. And you could kind of see it and feel it, and you kind of wanted it.
And we bought
I think
in.
it
Hang on one
drove-
second.
I think it drove an alignment across everybody to this one goal, all the way from the top to the bottom, like the story of the person who was going through NASA and talking to different folks at different levels, and he's talking to the janitor.
Mhm.
He's talking to the person behind the screen, and they all said the same thing. What's your job? To get somebody to the moon. Even the janitor said, my job is to get somebody to the moon.
Everyone-
That alignment up and down. was-
Everyone had a piece of it, yes.
And we all bought in. And the other movie about the coders,
Mm-hmm.
behind the scenes.
Yeah. Why did we buy in? There were two other people hands I saw, one over here, 2 and 3.
I think we've said it. It was a unifying message, right?
Mhm.
That's what he was after.
Okay.
Unifying message.
It was an unequivocal belief in the mission.
Excellent. Valued in everything.
I mean, he got my point, but it was an aspirational challenge. I mean, who doesn't want to do something that's never been done before, right? To be a
Mhm.
part of that process.
Cool.
It was part of already of his brand. You had Peace Corps, you had the physical fitness for elementary schools, so it was inspiring on many levels, but it was already built in.
Okay, you guys can go in any order you want, but we'll do 3 more. 1, 2, 3, I think.
If you can see yourself doing it, he created the vision so people could see it.
Mhm.
If you can see it, you can do it.
We were competing against a common enemy. And it was one way for everyone to get behind to compete against the Russians. Because at that point in time, we were behind. And he came up with this vision, and everyone said, yes, we're going to achieve it.
And good to see you, David. Yes. One more over here.
It was an emotional challenge.
How so?
It tore our heartstrings, and as everyone else says, it aligned us all to the goal.
Excellent. Anita, last one?
I love all of these inspirational answers, but I think your question was, why did it succeed? And I think it's because they had an incredibly detailed plan. Everybody bought into the plan, and they executed flawlessly.
Thank you so much for that. All those answers are amazing. And what Kennedy did was he told a story about the future. Yeah, he was already working with the NASA scientists and all kinds of other folks. It was it was an incredibly integrated solution, as one of our respondents said, absolutely. And that's how a future story earns buy-in. I did about 100 interviews in the last almost 2 years now with executives from companies that were 30 billion, 40 billion, all the way down to some rank entrepreneurs. And one of the things I heard that truly surprised me was that a lot of leaders are struggling with earning buy-in from their teams and from their clients. You know, you have an idea and you want it to happen. You want to go to the moon, whatever your moonshot is, but not everybody's on board. So that's why I wanted to focus a little bit. I've been thinking about this a lot, about how can you earn buy-in from folks? Well, you do it with a story about the future, and you put people into that story as the heroes. So they're the ones that actually get to go on the journey. Joseph Campbell was one of the first folks to figure out this notion of hero's journey as a pattern of human transformation. It's what connects us to art and literature and so many other things. But you guys don't need to have a rocket to make all of this stuff work. All you need is a story. And what happens if you're a leader and you're sharing information with your team, these are the things that they're looking for. And we already heard many of these answers. They're looking for what's next. They want to get a sense of those outcomes that are going to come from it. It's got to be practical. It's got to match their way of thinking. It's got to be something they can connect with and feel. They've got to see themselves in the future. This is so different than a PowerPoint presentation with sales quota numbers, right? That's one way to motivate people. But the challenge that we all face right now is that most of the significant work that we're doing is first of a kind. We're not being asked to put another Howard Johnson's at the next major interstate highway intersection anymore. It's not business as usual. If you just grow arithmetically or even geometrically, you can become irrelevant super quickly. Everyone's being asked to respond to competitive changes, to new kinds of technology. Is artificial intelligence going to replace half of my workforce kind of things? These are tough questions, and they require systemic responses. It's hard for people to tackle that much change on their own. I believe it's the leader's job to cast a better, more detailed vision. And Anita, I love your comment. There's got to be a plan there. But even if you have the world's greatest plan, if you just share the plan with folks, there's not enough inside to make them want to do it, to make them attached to it, to help them to see what it is that they're going to get from it by contributing their time and effort. So that's why Future Story is so important. Here's one more.
This is a day I've been looking forward to for 2.5 years.
Have you all seen this before? It's from
Every once in a
2007.
while, a revolutionary product comes along that changes everything. And Apple has been, well, first of all, one's very fortunate if you get to work on just one of these in your career. Apple's been very fortunate. It's been able to introduce a few of these into the world. In 1984, we introduced the Macintosh. It didn't just change Apple, it changed the whole computer industry. In 2001, we introduced the first iPod. And it didn't just change the way we all listen to music. It changed the entire music industry. Well, today, we're introducing 3 revolutionary products of this class. The first one is a widescreen iPod with touch controls. The second is a revolutionary mobile phone. And the third is a breakthrough internet communications device.
I don't think anybody knew what that was. That's why they're not cheering.
So, 3 things. A widescreen iPod with touch controls, a revolutionary mobile phone, and a breakthrough internet communications device. An iPod, a phone, and an internet communicator. An iPod, a phone. Are you getting it? These are not 3 separate devices. This is one device. And we are calling it iPhone. Today, Apple is going to reinvent the phone. And here it is. Well, actually, here it is, but we're...
All right, so that was Steve Jobs' announcement of the iPhone in 2007. What do you think had more impact on the world? Sending a man to the moon or the iPhone?
It depends on the time.
Okay. Don't be afraid to be wrong. You'll be wrong. It's okay.
See, it definitely depends on the time, but going to the moon had technology. This is technology, just showing the evolution of the technology.
Yeah, that's true. Each thing in its own time. Well, here's the deal. The Saturn V rocket, fully loaded, with or without crew, was about 6.1 million pounds. Okay, that's a lot to carry off into space. And remember, the investment was 25 billion, and the payback was 181 billion. Here's the impact of the phone. 2.6 billion in R&D, 10 million jobs globally, 2.4 trillion to the international economy. Now last night I got out my calculator and I ran out of zeros figuring this out. But if you look at impact versus weight, okay, because the iPhone weighs 4.8 ounces, it's 300 million to 1. That's the impact of the iPhone, 300 million to 1. Now that was just for fun. But the difference here, the important point about this story, comparing it to John F. Kennedy's story, is that John F. Kennedy told the story before anybody built anything. There was nothing. He encouraged all of that stuff to happen in, as someone said, a coordinated fashion. So the universities, the researchers, the military, NASA, the new space program, and all this training all happened at the same time. They didn't know what a heat shield was to get the capsule back safely. They had to invent that. They didn't know what, the stuff we sleep on, the memory core foam stuff was. They had to invent that so people would feel comfortable when they're taken off at 5,000 Gs or whatever it is. But Steve Jobs did it differently. He actually built all of the infrastructure before making the announcement. I want to share one more thought with you. In my opinion, the biggest invention of Apple was not of their own making. It's the 99-cent song. In order to get the iPod to play music and let you download one song at a time, like he said, they changed an entire industry. That's licensing. That's old, gnarly, fat, tough, licensing guys and gals who were controlling the music business and wanted you to listen to it their way. But they got that, they fixed that. They did the same thing with AT&T on the launch of the iPhone. They changed the way products are developed and rolled out, and now they are the clockworks for dozens of different industries that sync their stuff together. Jobs built it first and then made the announcement about the future stories. So you got a tremendous amount of feeling of what's going on. So what made his ideas work? In my opinion, and from talking to some others, people felt like they had a superpower. Oh my God, I can have that in my hand, more computing in my hand today with a Samsung or an iPhone than in all of the different moonshots that went on. There's more computing power in a phone than there is in the entire NASA program back in the 1969 era. It's amazing. The other thing was a really cool design. You got one device instead of 3, the app strong, blah, 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 the launch changed everything. So that's another example of a future story. And what's really cool about what Jobs did is he created an epiphany for folks. And this is something as leaders that you can do when you're talking to your teams and creating stories for their futures. You can give them that feeling that they're part of it and they're going to make it happen and that it's real for them. There's an emotional connection there, as you had mentioned before, that makes all the difference in the world. So it's your job to help that material connect, and that's what a future story is all about. So from a leader's perspective, here are some of the things that you can expect as a benefit from doing the very hard work, it's not easy, of figuring out what that future story is, how to set the context, and how to get everybody on board. You get shorter time to launch, you save time, money, and effort, because this is all about design. And when you do design well, you're getting multiple outcomes from the same action or activity. And you can read the other ones, but alignment is so essential here. When you've got everybody believing the same thing, we're going to send a man to the moon, for example, it's amazing. In your business, you've got moonshots as well, especially as you're facing these first-of-a-kind challenges that we're all up against right now. So, does a future story work regardless of the size of an enterprise? Yay or nay? Yay, I agree. And does it work in terms of your budget? Absolutely yes, because stories are free. You don't need an agency, you don't need a consultancy, you don't need a tech shop, you don't need an order from Congress. It's just free, it's just a story. And the same thing is true for industry. And no matter what your situation is, a future story can give people a really clear picture of where you're going, why, what's in it for them, how you're going to get to that place in the future. Because that's what everybody's looking to know. Most people are more motivated in making a difference than they are in making a little bit more money. If you think about that from the people that you know in your enterprise, with the exception of maybe some of the alpha dog salespeople, that's probably true. So how do you write your future story? You don't write it. Put your pens down. Stories are not about just writing things. You have to design it. Does that make sense? It's like Steve Jobs, he didn't just rehearse his keynote. He had to put in place all of these ideas with AT&T, with the technology suppliers. They had to change the way chips were made. They had to get the aluminum smelting machines to continuously crank these things out. They needed to create robots to assemble them, to disassemble them. It's a whole bunch of different things that had to be aligned. That's design. The story is a reflection of what you're actually doing and how you're doing it. So the real work of a future storyteller is to design the future state enterprise and to be the quarterback or the architect of that so that everybody has a comfortable feeling that their contribution is going to actually make a difference. That's what they care about. That's why future stories work. But what I'd like to do is explain to you in some detail how to actually create one. Because you come to presentations and you go, well, that's a great idea, but now how do I do that? So that's what I want to talk about. But why don't you keep a few people in mind, okay? Kennedy did it with Future Story, right? You saw the video. And Jobs did it with the iPhone and several times after that with new product launches. But there are some other folks that painted pictures of the story. Remember watching the Disney show on Sunday nights? And they'd always have like the little model of Epcot, and Disney would always talk about that. Never quite put the dome over it, but did transform real estate, did transform entertainment, did link multiple kinds of media together into one giant system that we now know as Disney, ABC, and everything else. And Bezos did it with Amazon and with rockets and all kinds of things. So all these folks have used future stories, including Musk, to get everybody on the inside of their business and on the outside of their business all to rally around a single concept, usually a concept that changes the way the world works. What each of these folks did is they changed the way their business works on the inside to meet the future need of their customers and partners. That's the courageous moment. If you don't take anything else away but that, that's the most important thing. Your job as a leader to prepare your company going forward is not to do more PR, no offense to anybody in PR here. It's not to do more internet advertising. It's not to do more of the same of anything that you're doing. In my opinion, it's about designing your business for the future and doing it with customers and employees in mind, because that's what creates the gravitas to get everyone to work together in new and different ways. All right, so here are the 6 things that you need to do. And these are going to be behaviors, and it's going to take a while for some of this to sink in. And by the way, I will make the slides available to anybody that wants them, but keep taking pictures. It looks really good on camera. All right, the first thing is to do what customers want. There are a lot of leaders out there that right now are doing what they want just for the heck of it, or what their boards and shareholders tell them to do, which might not be in the interests of customers, employees, or the planet. But do what your customers want, because that one decision will steer you in the direction of success, because your customers won't buy what they don't want. It's that simple. The second one is to know how they want to feel. Because we live in such a complex economy with so many technologies and so many different options, lots of competition, people today are deciding a lot based on how something makes them feel, not just the attributes of something. So we're much less engineers as buyers, and we're a lot more artists. And if you believe that, no matter what your training as a chemist, as a Six Sigma person, whatever it is, people decide with their hearts. And as a leader, if you can design your business to include some emotional attributes in the services that you provide and the things that you offer, you're up there. The next is to declare the rules of the road. What was one of the rules of the road that Kennedy put out there? What was the game-changing mission directive? We will put a man on the moon by the end of the decade, as he said. And what was the rest of it? and bring him home safely. It would have been so much easier to just leave the guy up there. It would have cost way less. We could have done it years earlier. But your job as a leader is to inspire folks and to make the mission safe and to really make a difference in the lives of others. Finally, if you don't do this, you shouldn't be a leader. You've got to, no offense, you've really got to do this. You've got to design your business to be adaptive. If you're making any changes, don't replace one static system, do a reorg, and have another static system. The system has to be open. It has to include input from your shareholders, your suppliers, your employees, and most importantly, your customers in the market. Many of us are hearing about environmental concerns these days. Water, air, sustainability. Those are also parts of your input and why a good design can make a really good difference in a business and make people feel good at the same time. So design your business to be adaptive. The next one is to craft signature experiences. Wherever your business comes into contact with your customers, there has to be an experience there. What's the difference between a service and an experience?
Feeling.
It's a feeling, absolutely, absolutely. And a really good experience is one that transforms you. So has anybody flown Ryanair?
Yes.
Is that a service or an experience or a nightmare?
Nightmare.
Nightmare, why?
Because the service and the experience is not good.
It's non-existent. Yeah. There was even an article a couple years ago about seat design, because it's all this cool technology. So Ryanair wanted to do this thing where they put saddles in there and you'd step into it and just kind of ride like this. That's not about customer experience. I flew Delta from Oregon to Salt Lake City and back, and I'm going through the gangways, and it has this lie flat stuff, and there's this guy just sleeping so comfortably, very different than Ryanair. So experiences are part of your brand. They're part of your service. They're what makes you different. They're what makes you money, okay? And finally, create heroes. Anybody have an idea what that one means? How do you create a hero? Why is that important? What does that mean? Okay, yes?
You got to have champions to bring your idea to fruition. You can't do it yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Make everybody get involved.
Yeah. Were you just doing your hair, or did you have an answer?
I can say something.
Okay.
You had to get somebody to center your story around you. You need a character.
Yes, exactly it. Exactly it. And who's the best person to center your story around? A hero, yes. That's the role. Who's the hero? And how many customers do we have? Millions of them, thousands, hundreds, dozens, whatever they are. Everybody wants to be the hero. And the same is true for your employees. So who says you have to have one story? You can have a story for your employees. You can have a story for your cashiers. You can have a story for your scientists in the laboratory. Everyone's the center of their own world. And if you recognize that as a leader and you present your strategy, your plans, and your ideas in the form of a future story that they can relate to so they can see what's their role in it, what's their potential impact, boom, you've created heroes.
So I started my professional career at GE probably about 3 or 4 years after Welsh became CEO.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the reasons that Welsh was so successful was because each one of those things he did to transform that business.
Very cool. Nice affirmation.
Yeah.
Cool. I guess it's true. Thank you for that. I'll pay you later. Okay. All right. So let's talk in very specific terms. How are we doing on time? Where's Calvin?
You're good. You good?
Oh, okay. When I'm not good, don't tell me. Okay. All right. All right. All right. Now we're going to take a little drop into the weeds, but these are very, very important weeds. Because if you don't know the details, you can't build up a story that's got impact, connects with people, ties to them emotionally, and actually makes a difference to the business. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a little bit of John F. Kennedy and a little bit of Steve Jobs, and we're going to kind of blend it together. So this approach, this framework that I'm going to share with you with some real live examples is going to help you decide if future story is something that you want to try as you're leading your folks into change and hopefully into a better world. So the first thing was know what your customers want. The way we presented that for Transitions Optical, which is the company that makes the sunglasses that change, you know, when you walk out, okay, is this. This was their reason for being. So would you read it out loud, please? Can you see okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, just this part here.
Transition vision beyond nature. In-store experience exists to astound eyeglass wearers and non-wearers so much that they tell their friends.
Now, isn't that an interesting mission? I bet the folks in the finance department are probably like, ugh, it's about making money, it's about selling glasses, it's about reducing costs and raising our distribution. No, it's not. If you're a wholesale supplier and you're trying to make an impact in retail, this makes all the sense in the world. Why? Why is that a better reason for being than just selling more glass lenses?
Sustainable.
Because?
It's sustainable.
It's sustainable because why?
Oh, because people are going to keep wearing eyeglasses, and they'll buy one pair and then keep buying more.
And they'll tell their friends. The focus, yes, go ahead. Yeah, you don't have to pay the tax for a bad brand, which is called advertising. You can let your customers do it for you. So if they engineer the store to astound people, oh my gosh, these lenses are so cool. And I got a chance to go through and really learn this brand. And when you put those things on, it is really amazing. You actually feel like you have a superpower, because especially in very well lit or even wide range of light, like you're on a golf course and you're staring off into the brush. I don't play golf, but if I did, I would only be in the brush. You can actually see lots of the detail there. I saw one other hand, yes?
You transition from product awareness to product advocacy. So your customers become your salespeople and your supporters, your champions, much like Harley Davidson did by creating a community.
Very good.
So they didn't have to really market anymore because their customers were their salespeople.
Great. Anybody have a Harley tattoo they want to share? We have cameras. All right. Next one. Alternative apparel, homegrown firm right here in Atlanta. They make really cool, very soft t-shirts. And this is a t-shirt company, but look how they listen to their customers. Alternative apparel exists to promote the quest of free-thinking people to, made-up word coming, individuate by encouraging them to wear t-shirts when and where they want. So Alternative was so tied into its community that they understood that clothes were a language of self-expression. And they wanted to be that language to let people express themselves. The advertising campaign took on that vibe. The catalog, the pictures, the models they used, the way they went to retail, all of that stuff happened. They grew, and they sold a couple years ago for $60 million to Hanes. Remember all those folks in college that would make t-shirts by hand? 60 million bucks. Not bad. iPay Technologies, based out of Elizabethtown, Kentucky, was the first independent bill pay company. They focused on credit unions and community banks. This is how they understood their customers. Our job is not to make money, it's not to sell stuff, it's to make the experience of online bill paying easy. So easy that everybody wants to talk about it. Okay? How many of you guys talk about commodity things that you use every day? Does anybody talk about apple juice, eggs, toilet paper, grass cutting companies? No. But people started talking about this. And what was so interesting about this business is that by focusing on the experience, they were able to make promises to the credit unions and community banks that if you buy our service, we will convert a certain percentage of your members to the point that it was an almost instant payback. So it wasn't a software purchase where you had to like earn your money back over time. It was like, boom, we'll get 50% right away, 75% right away, because they focused on the depositor's experience. All right, let's take a look at the second question, which is about how do you make people feel? This feeling thing is so important because it's the magic tuning fork. It's kind of like being an orchestra conductor and having everyone in the same key. It's how you get all the different parts of your experience to feel the same. So for this pack ship copy kind of company, again based in Atlanta, called Soho Hero, they didn't make it unfortunately, we put these words at the center of everything that we did. So from the way customers were greeted to the way the signage system worked, you know, from far away at the street to walking by to inside the store, to the way the e-commerce worked, the way the language around services happened, the training, the experiences with customers, the handling techniques, all of these were based on this notion of understood, connected, supported, and empowered. Everything revolved around that. That we have a heart there because that was truly the heartbeat of the brand, and it created alignment throughout the business. Transitions, again, had a totally different formula for creating that emotional connection with folks. Theirs was first to feel welcome in the store. Look, there's all this technology happening. There's a lot of new stuff. What are these glasses that change colors with chemicals inside of them? I don't understand that. Let's make people feel welcomed and then informed. And then let's blow them away by giving them an experience. And this was the cool thing about the store. It used to be that in order to get a transitions experience, you had to buy the glasses and have them custom ground to your prescription. We figured out a way using technology to not make that the case. So you could actually go in, try them on, and see clearly. You know how hard it is when you are going to buy glasses? Can I borrow yours for a second?
Sure.
Thanks. All right. Is it okay if I put them on just?
Yeah.
I won't stretch them out. Okay, so here I am. All right. And
I look great.
thank you very much. Sally, Jesse, Raphael. All right. So I'm looking, can you hold your hands up right here? You're the mirror, okay? And I'm looking at myself with these trial glasses, and I can't really see myself, right? Because there's no prescription in the glasses. I have my glasses, but when I take them off, I can't see, okay? So I put them back on, and I still can't see. So one of the things we did for transitions to make people feel, thank you very much, to make them feel astounded was we created a digital kiosk that would take pictures of you when you tried on each different frame, and then you'd try on 3 or 4, and you'd push the button, and then as you turned your head like this, it would turn your virtual head inside the display, and you could see how the frames looked from this side, from here, and from here. So you could see all 4 of them at the same time, this time with your glasses on, okay? See how the idea of this kind of emotional inspiration drove some technology? That's why this is really important. It gives your people like bumper guards in bowling, you know, you get a better score if the bumper guards come up. It gives them a chance to succeed better if they have some parameters. People like some constraints every once in a while. All right, we define the rules of the road. Now you can't read these, they're very small, but people need the comfort and they need the direction that being very, very specific brings. So I'm going to read a couple of them to you here. We'll never compromise our security. We'll always make payments on time. Interesting. This one, the never compromise security, led them to decide that in order to keep everything running up, that they would run a redundant system. So if they were on AT&T fiber, they brought in Comcast fiber. They had dual systems running. And at first they thought, gee, that's really expensive. But turns out that one of those things went down for 2 days, and if they didn't have that, how could people not pay their bills, tens of thousands or millions of depositors for 2 days? And this was back a while ago, okay, back, you know, more than 10 years ago. So it was a very smart decision that drove their investment, and it helped them to keep their brand promises in public. People would call them and say, hey, I heard you guys had a cable cut. Yeah, we did, no worries, we're still up. Made a big impact on folks. Another one was, let's see, oh, this was probably the most important one. iPay will always design solutions with successful subscriber adoption in mind. Now today it's common sense to run your apps by a quality control team to make sure that they're easy to use and they're not confusing and things like that. You've probably been asked to do a little bit of software rating in your time. They did it, you know, 12 years ago, 2003, 2004, whatever, however many years ago that was. So they always put the lens on of, will it make subscriber adoption easier? Can we get people to switch from doing things on paper to doing things electronically with minimal heartache and with lots of success? This is an old example, but it's so similar to the things that you're facing because often you're trying to get people to change their behavior, change the way they think. You know, for today it's like the elbow bump. That's a little change, not a huge thing. But to change the way that you come to work, to change what you do and how you think, not easy. These principles can make a big difference. The next one was to make your business adaptive. Everybody doing okay on attention? All right, this is really deep in the weeds. When I worked at IBM as their e-visionary, I was exposed to the work of Stephen Heckel, Russell Acoff, and a bunch of other really smart folks that were figuring out how to solve planet-sized problems. When you think about it, you know, when you're going to school, you have kickball teams and classes, and you know, maybe like a community board for your neighborhood. Those are small kind of governance things, but they don't work when you're trying to solve huge things, like China's putting up 100 cities of 1 million population each at the same time. That's a huge thing. Taking pollution out of the air, putting oxygen back in, cleaning up the oceans, rebuilding coral reefs. These are all things that require organizations that we don't have yet. We don't have global scale organizations to do that stuff. But underneath all of that is this idea of designing to be adaptive. So here's what a design to be adaptive looks like. We call it a promise map. But basically you've got the company in here, and you've got all the different people that they serve on the outside. How many org charts have customers in them? Or vendors, or government agencies, or ideals, or emotions, or good things that you want to do in the world? They're just devoid of all of that. So by going down a level, you can see how the organization is set up, not into departments, but into capabilities. People, process, tools, business rules that actually get the work of the customer done. Clayton Christensen wrote The Innovator's Dilemma a while ago. It's all about the problems of innovation. He also penned this idea of customers' jobs to be done. And the idea behind this methodology, which I encourage all of you to at least become a little familiar with, is that in order to run your business better, you need to understand what your customer is trying to do when they purchase your product or service. What's their job to be done, okay? So this is totally compatible with that idea, so there's already a lot of technique out there if you'd like to know more. Going down even deeper, you can see how one capability gets organized. And I know that's totally illegible, but after class, we can talk about that if you like. Okay, here's another one. It's the same thing, but this is what Disney used in 1957 to architect the Disney enterprise. Has anybody seen this chart before? This was, when I saw this, it was like, boom, so cool, because it's so about being open and being adaptive. So you can see here is publications, and the creative talent and the theater films feeds in raw material for books. That makes sense. And the books plug the films. See how there's like a connection there? Let's pick up another one here. So merchandising, or Disneyland, provides additional sales outlet to merchandising licensing, and they provide, I can't read that, park through puzzles or something like that. Fees, concessions, and stuff like that into the park. So the licensing feeds Disneyland. So all these different entities feed each other. It's by definition a design. And we live in this kind of environment all the time. We just don't usually connect the parts. John F. Kennedy, although he didn't do all the work, recognized that a lot of different players had to be connected in order for that future story to work. And Jobs did the same thing. He worked with people inside his organization and people in other organizations outside of Apple to make the customer's work easier, to deliver amazing products with much higher value propositions, lower weight, higher computing value, blah, 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 and made it go. So this is a great way to take a look at how your business fits in with everything else. The last part is experiences. I did some work for McDonald's a long time ago when I was at IBM. It was almost 20 years ago, and they finally released the digital drive-thru a year ago. They finally did it. So I don't think they even knew that the work that we did was there, but 20 years ago we knew that cell phones were coming. We still had brick phones, those real big things. So the notion here with a few pictures is to give a clear picture of how that would work. So these women are driving, and of course the person driving is not using their phone, and they place the order, and it's received. We have an operator here, but now it's just done electronically. It just shows up on the screen. You don't need an operator to talk to you. And they bring you the stuff out. And what was interesting here, just to give people a couple little clues, was that the way the graphics appeared here on the order were exactly the same way they appeared on the monitors inside the kitchen. So special sauce, lettuce, cheese, pickles, onions on a sesame seed bun would show up graphically, and that worked for people of all different languages, so it was all visual. The little receipt right here had exactly the same thing, and the bags were clear. Why were the bags clear? Which, exactly right, and what is that? Make sure your order's right, and what's the economic impact of that? Faster, yes, and?
Cuts down the time that you're checking the order.
Which does what to sales? And how do you make more money in the drive-through or in the restaurant? That's true, more people go through. So that clear bag thing was worth, you know, hundreds of millions of dollars systems-wide. Little detail that came out of doing more for the customer. Who would have thought that making the order easier for the customer to see would make the lines faster, would make more money? But that's the way it works. That's the systemic way of looking at things. All right, transitions, same thing. I just wanted to share this with you. This is a way of sharing a story. The details don't matter, but here's the part that does. Right here is a picture of what the store might look like with some people in it. Usually when you get retail designs, all they show you is the pretty furniture and the colors, because that's what the designers care about. But inside of that beautiful space are people working and helping each other. So we put the people in. And these little blue dots indicate training and behavior and language clues, which we list out over here. Okay? So authentic smile, a uniform, guest questions are answered before more information is shared. So as your vision comes out in your head as a leader or with your teams, you can capture it in storyboards and then share that and help make that real, because you're trying to change the way your company works so that it can serve customers better. And that involves changing everything at the same time. You can't just say training department, IT department, finance department, operations, OSHA, and housekeeping. You've got to do it all together, and pictures are a great way to get folks on the same page. All right, more of the same from a different company. And let's talk about creating heroes for a second. You guys still doing okay on attention? Time check, Calvin? Good? All right. So there's a company in town called Connor Partners. And they were one of the first change management consultancies in the country, again, Atlanta-based. They had huge contracts with AT&T and IBM, and they helped those folks manage their way through change. They were all about building advocacy, understanding, getting people on the same page. So they were going through a really interesting challenge themselves. They were growing so quickly that they needed some practice management software before the phrase practice management software was even a thing. So they were looking at either buying something or building something. And this is before we had Pipedrive and Salesforce and all these other kinds of base tools to work with. So what we did is we created a story about a woman named Lindsay. She's right there on crutches. And it was her first day at work. So we kind of picked Lindsay up just as she was getting hired. She was so excited, but then, oh my gosh, she breaks her leg and she can't go to work for a few days. No problem. We have software that takes care of that. So the story told how even someone who's unable to come into work could be productive. And that extended to, what about people who weren't in the same office? How could they work together and collaborate? Or what about people who are on sabbatical and so on? So that one little story instance made it work for lots of different folks, and they could all see how they fit in with the software. That was the big difference. Most people think software is going to replace me. The smart money is on the software is going to help me. So that's what this story did. We included all kinds of pictures of screens and situations and things like that. And Lindsay's life started before she was hired and ended when she was a master tutor to others. And she had her own apprentices. That's how the business worked. So that was a fun story for them. And here's another way to share a story. And this one, again, is from Transitions. Time for another video.
You know, we had this dream for such a long time, and it's reality now. I think we feel much more confident that we can really build this experience that we, dreamed up. This is the perfect experience, and now here it is.
right, so this gives you a really clear picture of how the design works without people. And it was used to help get into malls. And it was used to help the parent company, Essilor, and Pittsburgh Paint and Glass, to go ahead and fund the store. And it was used in training. And it gets used with the architecture folks. And it gets used with the media and for press releases and all that kind of stuff. Do you feel like you know what that store is a little bit more like now? Okay. So this was an internal piece. This is before we even get out into the public. So that's another way to tell a story, is with animation or some 3D visualizations. And this last one, I'm getting the stand up over here, so we're coming to an end. I want to skip this one. This was a project for Wingate Inns, where they were designing the hotel stay of the future. Okay, so we'll just pass through on that. So here's what you have to do. There are 4 things that leaders need to do, and these are not hard skills. These are not things you can go just like check off of a list. They require you to rewire a little bit of how you think and what you do and your priorities. And the truth is, if you're trying to make change, the most important thing you can do is to be brave in front of your teams, in front of those that you lead, and show them that you're going through that change, because if you can change, people feel they can change as well. So here are the 4 things. The first one is to think like your customers and employees. You can't just say, I'm going to think like my customers and employees. You have to sit down with them and talk to them and find out what's going on in their life and how they conceive things and what makes their jobs easy or hard. This is a behavior change. You have to be more open and ask more questions. So that's the first one. The second one, this is critical. This will be hard to do, but this is where the big value is. For those of you that are far away, it says design before you delegate. I can't tell you how many assignments I've been on where the boss, male or female, says, why don't you run with that? Without giving any direction whatsoever. No boundaries, no idea of what success looks like, no constraints, just go do it. It's like the silverback gorilla way of managing a business. It's very dated. It doesn't work as well in changing times. And we are in changing times. Most of your work is first of a kind. Design first. You may have to learn something about that. You may have to bring some more people into the decision making. You may not be the one with the best ideas all the time. And you have to be okay with that. But let everybody see that, because then they'll know that they can kind of come in and fill the gap. That's what creates energy and that gravitas. The third thing is context. You notice it doesn't say content. Okay? Content is a bunch of stuff you throw on your website and people have to find their way through it. Context means clear guidelines and parameters for people to do what you need them to do without requiring a ton of individualized instruction. Have you guys ever seen that the advertisement? I can't remember which tech company it was, but there's this like football-looking big executive guy standing on an escalator. You know, it's a really big escalator in a beautiful office building. And he's standing there, and then the video kind of comes around and goes, what's going on? This isn't working. Come on, whose fault is this? Hey, we have to talk to somebody about this. He's on an escalator. He could just walk, okay? It would be so easy. So context means letting people know where the latitude is, what they can do, what they can't do, what is acceptable behavior, what's not acceptable behavior in our company. And that lets them be more autonomous and make decisions closer to the front line. That's something you've probably heard about. Finally, is remember that your customers and your employees are the heroes, not you. And I mean that with total respect, but we fall into a bias of thinking that because we've made it to a leadership position or we're at the top, that it's all about us. Nothing could be further from the truth. The higher up you are, the more humble you can become. That's a good combination. So if you go down this path of future story, of creating narratives that embrace the diversity and the wisdom of your crowds, you'll get these benefits. Clarity will help everyone struggle less. There'll be more questions, but there'll be more good questions. There'll be more action and less stopping. You'll be able to get the strategy done, because once you have a clear picture of it, Your strategy is simply make that story real. See that picture? See that movie? Did you read that thing about Lindsay and her first day of consulting? Let's make that real. That gets into people's hearts. That's what they're willing to work for. Buy-in is what you're going to get. When people buy into your ideas, you can expect a lot less resistance. When I was doing those interviews, a lot of what I heard was lack of clarity and way too much resistance to change. And finally, when you show people how to go from idea to done, that's the behavior that starts to happen. So everybody can start generating ideas, but they'll be done within context. They'll be done on purpose. They'll be done by design. So this is my wish for you. I'd like you to try one of these ideas this month. Just pick one and try it and see if you notice some kind of a change in the way you work, and more importantly, in the way people respond to you. Just try it and see what happens. It's very low risk and very high reward. I hope that you'll become better at leading, crafting, designing, and inspiring. And finally, that you get the buy-in that you're looking for. So, see if there's any. Yeah. So with that, that wraps it up for today, and happy future stories. All right.